Hello once again as we continue our series of revisiting some of our rock stars to see how they're placed with what's happening with COVID. I'm joined now by Kylie Maxwell from LJ Hooker at Queanbeyan, who once again was one of our very early guests on the show. Kylie, welcome again. Nice to see you.
Thanks, Karen. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for your time. Kylie, just wondering if you can tell me how. I want to talk about the Canberra market, but I particularly want to talk about your business and how you've adapted to COVID.
Yeah, sure. So as I just briefly said to you before, I think we're at week 9 at the moment, and I feel it's gone very, very quickly. So for our business, we pretty much hit the ground running as soon as the government put the regulations in place about restrictions and social distancing. I think it was really important for my husband and I as leaders to make sure our staff felt safe and they were across the board of what we wanted to do. So we didn't actually close our office. We just shut the front door to the public, and we cancelled any routine inspections that we had booked at the time because we just wanted to make sure we had our head around those and we were doing the right thing. Then going forward, we made sure we had video walkthroughs on all our rental properties, as well as our sales properties. So that made it easier for the consumer to be able to feel safe to view our properties. And our market was still bubbling along in rentals, which it is still to this day as well. And we then were doing pre-approval on rental applications. And once we'd have an approved applicant, we would then arrange a one-on-one inspection. So For us, it was business as usual, and we were making sure our full suite of services to our owners was still being fulfilled.
We'll drill down on a few of those procedures you talked about, because I think they're key for anyone watching this, because not everyone is going to be as fortunate as you are there, because that Canberra market was pretty much protected, I guess, in terms of unemployment because of your massive exposure there to the public sector.
Correct. And I think the other thing too is we went from both ends of the spectrum. So in our market, we either had tenants that were in secure jobs, being public servants jobs, or we had tenants that were already on benefits. So, there was the odd tenant on casual employment, which, unfortunately for them, they had lost their income. But we were able to direct them into the path of what assistance was out there and have conversations with our owners, which I'm sure we'll go into in a minute. But I think out of our portfolio, we're lucky to have only had about 5 tenants that we know about or who have come to us with hardship. So that we've been very fortunate in that case in comparison to, I would say, cosmopolitan areas of Sydney and Melbourne. And I think mainly that is due to our public service sector.
Can you tell me about I think you call them walkthrough inspections. Is that video walkthrough inspections? How do they work? Is that something that you've just started because of COVID, or is it something that you've done in the past?
It was something we just started because of COVID. We didn't have a Matterport camera or we didn't have a 360 camera. So we basically went back to basics. We did walk-through inspections on iPhone and we edited them through iMovie. And they were quite successful. They showed everything that needed to be showed, and people felt quite comfortable in viewing a property virtually. We then had a disclaimer document for someone to sign to say that they had viewed it virtually. But backing up to that, we did then do the one-on-one walkthrough inspections before a lease document was signed.
So really your virtual walkthrough was a process of elimination. If you like this, then we'll take you through.
Yes, and they had to have a pre-approved application as well. So we were only taking through, I think we would round it up to the top 3 that would be approved with their application. It did make a little bit more work because we were actually processing 30 to 40 applications at a time for a property, and then having to narrow it down to a top 3 once we'd done everything. But once we took the final 3 through, the owner then made a decision and the property was leased. So days on market were actually a lot our days on market were actually less than the market average, so which was great. Our vacancy rate was fantastic throughout that time.
Would you consider continuing that kind of practice, maybe changed a little bit, but would you consider it after COVID?
Definitely. I think going forward we need to do what the consumer would like us to do now. And I think going forward, there's still going to be a lot of people that don't feel comfortable in leaving their homes and going out to look at several properties with a group of people. So I think we need to offer different suites. It's not going to be for everyone. From an efficiency point of view, one-on-one appointments takes a very long time in property management. So we would need to look at that as well, where you can have an open home and have 10 people through rather than 10 private appointments. So it'll just depend on the property and it'll depend on the client, I think. But definitely we will now tailor our suite of services more to the individual.
Given the fact that you closed the doors, but you didn't close your office, so I assume that everyone was still turning up for work. Were there many procedures that you had to change?
We changed procedures in line with government regulations. So within the office ourselves, we had a very much, you need to wash your hands before you come into the office. You need to make sure all surfaces are cleaned regularly. So we had sanitisation stations. We had cleaning products available. We're very much a paperless office at the moment anyway, and a lot of our forms are sent or signed electronically. So we didn't actually physically have to deal with the public if we didn't need to. Our tradespeople and our creditors, they were obviously asked COVID questions. If we had routine inspections that we were still attending, there was COVID questions asked. So we definitely had to make sure we had the procedures in place for our team to feel safe and to ensure they were doing the right things by our clients. So there was a few things that we had to tweak. And we've got a fairly sizable office anyway, so we were able to send our sales team home and spread our property management team out. And it was a decision for our PMs that they wanted to stay working in the office. They didn't feel they could effectively work from home. And I think that comes down to a support thing as well, and bouncing ideas off each other as a team. I'm sure it would be very hard for a lot of businesses to stay connected to their staff. 1 or 2 Zoom meetings a day is great, but it's not the same as physically being in the same space as someone.
You mentioned that I think you only had 5 tenants who were not able to meet their rental payments. That's probably a lot less than many people watching this will be experiencing. But of those 5, what were the difficulties that you faced in doing those negotiations?
I think initially it's the conversation that you need to have with the client, being the tenant in this case, because they're obviously feeling very vulnerable. So you have to show them a lot of empathy. It's not you can't just send out a corporate letter to a client who's lost their job and now has no income coming into their family. It's quite a frightening time. So we had to change our approach in how we were dealing with people, and that had to be quite an empathetic approach, and we're here to help. And in that as well, you also have got to do the right thing by your own client. So you need to find out the backstory. So we did send tenants what we call a hardship form. It was a very soft hardship form, just asking them what their circumstances are and what they thought they could afford to do going forward. For us, we didn't waive rents. We just deferred those rents, and most of those clients were 100% happy with that because they don't want to have a large debt at the end of it either. We did, in the very first week, communicate with our owners regardless of that, we may come across this situation where we've got numerous tenants in hardship, and we're going to have tough conversations with them to say, look, we are going to have to do something for these tenants because housing is a basic need and people need that. And these tenants haven't lost their job through any fault of their own. It's a pandemic in the world. So we made sure we versed our owner clients on the fact that you need to prepare yourself for this, you need to prepare yourself financially for this, and you may need to be having conversations with your own accountant and bank to see where you are, because it could come a stage where we are going to have to offer reductions in rent. So I think just keeping those lines of communications open was very important, rather than just flicking a letter. It needed to be a personal phone call or a face-to-face Zoom meeting like this, where you could actually gauge how the client was feeling and what was coming across from us and our team, basically.
As the leader of your team, were you responsible for doing those interviews, or was it something you spread across the team?
I spread it across the team, but I was very clear in the message that I wanted to convey to our clients. So I did personalised standard letters, and we had a set of procedures that I did. And then we trained the team in this. And I just said to the team that I don't want you to get stressed by this. Don't get into an argument with anyone. If you don't have the answer, that's okay. Just say to the client, look, I'm going to speak to my director and I'm going to come back to you. So if I had to take over as a director, I would do that. But my team are fantastic, and they did speak to our clients very empathetically, and they spoke to the clients in the language that we always use in our agency. So, it wasn't, well, that's tough, too bad, you've got to pay your rent. It was more coming from a position of understanding and a position of negotiation. And typically property managers are not born negotiators. So it has been hard on the team, but they've handled it remarkably well. And we've had some lovely feedback from our tenants and from our owner clients on how we have handled that. So I think it's important as a leader that what you want to go out into the public space, you need to direct that. You can't let everybody just say their own thing, especially when some of our team members are younger and they haven't dealt with this. It's very hard for them to put themselves in the shoes of the client. So, yes, definitely as a leader, that had to come from me.
Well spoken, a very good message, Kylie. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. All the best to you and your team and or the broader community in Queanbeyan. I know that you're very concerned about them there. So thanks very much for your time.
Thanks, Kevin. Pleasure. Thank you.